Welcome to the world of Kingscraft. I'm David Kühn, the author of the game, and in this video I'll teach you the rules. If you want to skip to a specific topic, you can use the timestamps of the video. The king of Ambossa successfully ruled the country over the last decades. But one thing he didn't do. He didn't create an heir to the throne. And now the question is, who will be next? His solution: everyone from his people who dares can challenge him to a fair duel, and the first one to succeed will be as strong as he is, or even stronger, and so he is a rightful heir. You as players play as normal people from his kingdom who think that a career as a king would be a good idea, and so you start to get strong enough to beat the king. Let's talk about the setup of the game. First of all, each player chooses one of the 6 available player boards. They have both an individual and a neutral side. For the first round, I would suggest to take the neutral side for every player, since that's easier to learn and faster to start. Also, each player takes 3 heart tokens and places them on their boards. Then each player chooses a player color. There are 4 colors to choose from: blue, purple, green and orange. Each player takes a badge and a set of 7 action cards. Now we have to build the forge. The forge is made of 7 pieces that are all ordered by letters. The letters A to G. For the first games, I would definitely suggest to play them in order. But later on, you can mix them up and play them in a shuffled order. That is the setup for 4 players. If you're playing with less than 4, so 3 or 2, you take away some of the pieces. For 3 players, you remove 1, and for 2 players, you remove 2. You always remove the pieces with the white letters, so that's B, D or F. But since that's the setup for 4 players, we leave it as it is. Then we manage the items. First of all, we have to remove all the item cards that match to the pieces removed in the forge. So for example, if we removed piece D, we have to also remove all the cards that have the little d in the corner here. They can be placed in the box and are not needed for this game. Then you take all the class 1 items, shuffle them and give 2 to each player. Those are the random starting items. All the other items, so the class 3 and 2 items and the rest of the class 1 items, can be placed in the forge on the grayed out according places. Then you take the rest of the small cards. Those are the purple ones with the potions. You remove the 3 potions that have no text on them. Those are for your own ideas, but at the beginning you probably don't have ideas and should remove them. The rest of the cards can be mixed and placed as a random deck. So next we have to organize the creatures. There is a creature board that we have to place somewhere on the table. There are 3 sets of creature cards. On the back sides you see 1, 2 and 3. They are the creatures of class 1, 2 and 3. You have to mix them up and take as many of them for each class as it's stated here on the board you need for your player count. For example, for the class 1 creatures you need 8 with 4 players. You place them face down on the right place and then flip the top card. You do the same process for all 3 classes. Now it's time to choose a king for the game. The king is basically the end boss of the game. There are 8 king or queen cards you can choose from. There are 4 different kings in each 2 versions. The easy ones are the ones with the silver throne and the crown symbol. The hard ones, the one on the golden throne with the extra title. You can either mix them up and take any king and be surprised, or you choose a king you like. But for the first games I would definitely suggest to take an easy king, because they make the game shorter and easier to manage. In this case, I would say we play Queen Tessara. Last but not least, you place all the dice next to the table, also the little crown token. Then each player gets a player aid sheet that gives them some information about the game and help understand all the symbols. So now the game is set up. Each player can flip their starting items, equip them, and start playing. But you still don't know how the game works, so let me explain. The goal of Kingscraft is to fight the king or queen and succeed. So the first player who does that finishes the game and wins. In theory, a player could do that in the first round, but actually players are so weak in the beginning of the game that it's very, very unlikely to win the game in the first round. So you have to collect items to get stronger and find the right moment to attack the king and win the game. Kingscraft is not played in clockwise turns like many other games, but using those action cards. Each player has 7 different action cards. Each turn they choose one of them and place them face down on the table. After each player has chosen a card, they're all revealed and put in an order. This order is created by using the turn order guide here on the bottom of the card. For example, the king fight action is always first, then healing, then the class 1 fight, then the guard action, then the class 2 fight, then crafting, and finally the class 3 fight. And which of them is first? The one of the player who has more speed. Speed is this rabbit symbol here. You get additional speed on the shoes and some other items. So if one player has more speed than the other, he can go first. If 2 players have the same action card and the same speed, they both have to fight each other. They won't make damage in this fight, but the one who's stronger can go first. So after the turn order is decided, they are played in that order. So green would first try to defeat the king, then purple would craft, then orange, and last player blue would make a class 3 fight. All players take their cards back after doing their turn, and then the next round starts and they choose a new card. So let's have a look at all the actions that are in the game. They're the 3 fighting cards. Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3. They all serve the same purpose. You attack a creature. If you do the Class 3 fight, you fight the Class 3 creature, and if you win, you can choose a Class 3 item. If you do a Class 2 fight and win against a Class 2 creature, you can choose a Class 2 item. And if you do a Class 1 fight, you fight the Class 1 creature. If you win, you can choose a Class 1 item, and you can craft once. That's the only difference with a Class 1 fight. The Class 2 and 3 don't give you this extra craft action. Only the Class 1 fight is 1 item and crafting. Then you could also decide to fight the king. This card is the most important card in the game, but the least played. If you fight the king and win, you win the game and the game is over. If you don't dare to do any fights, you can use the guard action to get a safe item. Basically, you guard the king, and as an expanse, you can choose 1 Class 1 item. But since the king is guarded, each other player that decides to fight the king this round has a hard time, since for each guard action that the other players chose this round, the king is stronger by 4. Then there is the heal action. Through fighting, you can lose hearts, and with the heal card, you refill all your lost hearts. Last but not least, there's the craft card that allows you to craft twice. I spoke about crafting a couple of times now, but you still don't know what crafting is, so let me explain. Okay, crafting. There are 3 different ways to craft in the game. The first one is to combine items. You can always only combine items that are placed next to each other in the forge. For example, if I own those 2 items here, so if I already have them in my inventory, I could also have them equipped, that doesn't matter. I can give them back to the forge and take the item that is placed underneath them. So the arrows show which items are created from them. In this case, I would get this ring. And as you see, the items that before weren't available for the other players now get available for them again. So they're placed back in the forge for everyone to take. So that's the first way to craft, to combine items. The second one you can only do with Class 2 and 3 items, because they have an advanced backside. For example, this ring, if I advance this card, gets a speed on top of it that it hadn't before. What you get if you advance a card, you already see on the front side. In this case, you can already see the additional speed on the front. By the way, if you combine two advanced cards, the new item you get is automatically advanced. Also, if advanced cards are placed back in the forge, they stay advanced, so other players have the chance to get an advanced card directly from the forge. So, the first two ways are combining and advancing cards. There's also a third way of crafting, but to explain that, I first have to talk about potions. Potions are randomly taken from this pile. You then take the potion, look at it, and place it face down in your inventory. The other players don't know which item that is. Once per turn, you can activate one potion, and only one per turn, and use its effect. After the turn, the potion is put on a discard pile and gone. To get those potions, you can always choose to take potions instead of items. So if you, for example, defeat a class 3 creature, you would normally get a class 3 item. You can choose to take potions instead. And instead of a class 3 item, you would get 3 potions. Instead of a class 2 item, you would get 2 potions. And instead of a class 1 item, you can take 1 potion. And that is also the third way of crafting works. Because sometimes you have items you don't want anymore. And for one craft action, you can place that item back in the forge and take potions instead of it. So those are the 3 ways of crafting: combining, advancing, or switching items for potions. So we now talked a little about items, but I didn't tell you how to place them. So on each player board, there are 4 active slots, those on the top. They can be used in fights. The bottom 4 slots are just storage rooms. So basically they're in your backpack and you're carrying them with you, but you cannot use them. Those 4 top items have to fit. That means in the blue weapon slot, you can only place a blue card, a weapon card. And in the orange slot, you can only place a helmet, and so on. There are neutral cards that have a gray background. They can be placed in any slot, but they have to be placed in a slot to be used. So now you basically know everything about how to fight. And since the game is a lot about fighting, this is something you should know. So if a player decides to fight a creature, for example this class 1 creature here, they first have to roll all their dice. So the player always goes first. If we look at this hero, for example, they have 2 dice and nothing else. They could have more dice through items, but in this case they would only have 2. They roll all their dice, and after rolling they can use all their additional skills. For example, those shoes allow to re-roll a die 2 times. In this case I would probably re-roll the 2 and one of the 3s. Not the best result, but it is what it is. The sum of all your dice is your fighting power. In this case it's 7. Then the left neighbor does the same for the creature. So the creature has 2 dice and they re-roll it once. And that is a very good roll and not very good for the hero. To defeat a creature, you have to be stronger than the creature. A tie isn't enough. You have to definitely be stronger. So she has rolled a 7, but she also has an item that adds 2 fighting power to her result. And another 2 against creatures, so this wouldn't count against players or kings, but since she's fighting a creature, this is another plus 4. So 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 is still not enough to beat the creature, which has 12, so she has lost the fight. But in any case, if you win or if you lose, you can always take damage. That means you lose hearts. And the rule is, for each started 10, you lose 1 heart. That means if the creature would do 0 damage, you would lose 0 hearts. But from 1 to 10 damage, you lose 1 heart, and from 11 to 20, you lose 2 hearts, and so on. You can also see that on the backside of the player aids, so you don't have to remember. And it's important to know, you have to be stronger than the creature to defeat it, and you have to survive the fight. That means It could be that you are stronger than the creature, but you also lose your last heart, and then the fight is lost still. And you can win no more fights when you're at 0 hearts, so you will have to heal at some time. There's one thing about the creatures that I didn't tell you yet, and that is the bands. Some of the creatures have those circle icons on the top. Those are bans. Those are things you cannot use against this creature. This creature, for example, doesn't allow you to use your hand item. In this case, this item couldn't be used against the creature. But there is a way to ignore that. And that is if you're fast enough. Speed helps you to ignore the bans. All class 1 creatures have 1 speed, class 2 2, class 3 3, and kings 4. And if you are as fast as the creature, you can ignore the ban. And in this case, since all the starting characters have 1 speed anyways, and this character also has the shoes that give 2 additional speed, they're fast enough to ignore the ban.
If a creature is defeated, it is put on the discard pile and the next one gets revealed. If not, it stays where it is until it's defeated.
So that's all you need to know. Last of all, let me show you all the individual characters that you know what they do. So first of all, we have the Ironclad. He has 1 extra heart and 1 extra die that the other players don't. Then we have the Assassin. She has 1 extra slot she can use. She is the only character to carry 2 weapons. And the top weapon is never affected by bans on weapons. The Nobleman. He has 4 printed skills on the 4 slots. He is very strong at the beginning, but once there are items placed on them, he loses those skills. The Merchant. The Merchant has the extra Merchant token. She can place this token every round on one of the items in the forge or on the potions. Once another player takes this item, she can take 1 class 1 item or a potion. The Rogue. The Rogue has 4 additional action cards that she can use throughout the game, but they're all just single use only, so if she used a card, it's gone for the game. And the Alchemist. The Alchemist has 4 extra tokens that he can use throughout the game, each single use only. He can use multiple tokens in the same turn. They all have to do with potions. The first one allows him to flip as many of his hearts to the backside as he wants. Then he can take as many potions as he flipped hearts. The second one lets him look at the top 3 potions from the potions pile and put them back in any order. The next one lets him take 1 potion from the discard pile, and the last one lets him use 2 potions in 1 turn, which is otherwise not allowed. So that's it. That's all the rules you need to know. Thank you for watching. Enjoy Kingscraft, and I hope you have what it takes to rule.